Welcome back to It Tastes Like Burning. This is Matt.
This is Jesse.
And per the usual, I'm going to go through the quick podcast notes. You can always reach out to us at ittasteslikeburningcast at gmail.com. You can find us at Twitter at ITLB. The old subreddit at ITLBcast. I have to admit, I've basically let that just get the old Yeller treatment and let that fallen off to the wayside. The other thing that we've actually been focusing on a little bit more is our Patreon at It Tastes Like Burning. And today we have a pretty unique podcast, Jesse. What's the grand plan for today?
So we're privileged. We've got a couple guests in here with us today. We've got Kim, who is we're gonna just refer to her as a marketing expert. Okay, she's shaking her head no, but she's coming to us via her house. So excuse any audio issues. And then we've got Garfield over here, and he's got a business background, and he's a volunteer fireman, so he's got some interest in this conversation too. So
a lot of this comes from a specific SFFMA meeting that we had, State Firefighters and Fire Marshals Association of Texas, and it was our district meeting. And drum roll, here comes our massive outing for Granbury, Texas. And I'm the chief of Granbury. Jesse Slaughter is our training captain here in Granbury.
I'm also a former chief of another department. So.
Longtime chief.
Yeah.
And we have, and it's not all just altruistic motives. Don't get me wrong, there's some self-centeredness to this. But SFFMA meets a lot of the needs of our organization. And through a little bit of time, energy, and effort, some magic, and perhaps some serious discussion and thought, we decided that we wanted to breathe a breath of fresh new air into our SFFMA district. And let's be honest, our district was the equivalent of Old Yeller at the end of the movie. And it took a lot more than just an email and a text message to get our district kind of firing off again. And one of the things that we did in our district is we had a specific issue, and I wasn't sure if it was even worth having, but it was kind of a spin-off of our podcast. And I told Jesse and Jean, our district president, that I want to have a classroom discussion for a roundtable for retention and recruiting. And at the end of the day, we had, I think, what was it, Jesse?
6 or 8.
6 or 8 sign up for it. And it turned out to be a fantastic discussion. And unfortunately, there wasn't a ton of people there. But when I say 4 hours flew by, it was kind of ridiculous at how fast the discussion went and the engagement that we had from it. And at the end of the day, we kind of realized that the classic retention and recruiting discussion and a roundtable discussion, I think there's more to this. And without going through all the dogma, we had a lot of engagement at our table. And we had a wide variety of organizations there. And one of the interesting things is we managed to hit onto a topic that as soon as the question was asked, that it really piqued my interest. And that's why I invited Garfield down here today. Is luckily he is within our district, and he sacrificed a little bit of time to our podcast, and the same for Kim. And I just think this is a discussion that I believe is actually happening kind of nationwide, and these are things worth talking about.
So I think the discussion happens, but it happens between a couple guys in the apparatus bay, and it never gets brought to the forefront, right? And it's not something that it falls into that tradition killing progress kind of thing, right? The 100 years of tradition impeding progress. And the fact that a lot of these departments don't know what to do with it, or they don't have the knowledge to implement a plan of this kind. And then we're just lucky. And I would say that the thing that cuts us different, makes us different, is the fact that we were willing to take some risk, right?
Right. Well, and the one thing I'll add to it is, even if the retention and recruiting idea took root in their own organization, it stays in-house.
Yeah, it doesn't move anywhere.
It never moves anywhere. So it's the classic, if a tree falls in the forest, does it make any noise?
Right.
Well, in this particular case, no, because it never left the organization.
And that's kind of why I've been screaming from the rooftop for a year now, trying to draw some attention towards our department, because we're having what I would call limited success, right? I wouldn't say we're successful. We're having limited success. We're doing some things right. We're seeing the products of that. And it's like, hey, y'all look over here. And I'm not telling you it's going to work where you're at, but I'm telling you, you ought to think about it and at least see what's going on. And I think that's where we shoot over to Kim, get her take on this, because, and Kim, introduce yourself and explain who you are and what you do, and more than a marketing expert, right?
Okay, well, I'm Kim Hilsenbeck, and I'm the marketing director for SFFMA, which is the State Firefighters and Fire Marshals Association of Texas. And it's an association, a dues-paying organization for fire and emergency responders across the state, and primarily for the volunteer fire service. It's a 147-year-old organization, and I came on part-time in the spring to kind of help rejuvenate, kind of a little bit what you guys are talking about, like this rejuvenation, breathing new life into something. And a bit of rebranding, I think, was absolutely part of that. And so now I work full-time. So grateful. Such a great crew down here in Austin, and really delighted to be part of that team, and so honored that you guys invited me to be on this podcast. I am just over the moon happy. But I'm ready to dig into any recruitment and retention issues. And marketing expert, I always think it's tough to say, like, oh, I'm an expert. 25 years doing, this basic kind of work. Some days I feel like what I'm doing for SFFMA is a lot of like just throwing pasta against the wall to see what sticks. And what I found is, Texas is a very big, very diverse state. And what works in Granbury might not work in Garwood or Edgecliff Village or community volunteer, down in near Houston. So I am here today to talk about some ideas for engagement, and how can we do it, and what does it take. And then for the organization itself, I'm always looking for, what are y'all doing? What's working? Maybe what's not working is good to know too. And then sharing and pushing out content and showing people it's telling the story. To me, that's really what this is all about. It's telling the story of being in the fire service. And so I'm always looking for a way to bring in the human side of being a volunteer firefighter. So I love things like pictures of grit and dirt and exhaustion and elation and whatever the thing is, because I think sometimes, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes firefighters are really interested in trucks, in apparatus, and sort of the toys. But I'm not sure that is always the right angle to take. So when I tell the story, yeah, trucks are cool, but these are people we're talking about. And so I really love the idea of using that storytelling aspect of marketing to help with recruitment and retention. And I'll quit talking now.
No, I think you're good. And I think that's a big part of it. I think one of the things that Matt and I truly believe is that volunteerism is not dead, right?
Right.
It's 100% not dead. And we can prove that.
Mm-hmm.
Just through our area and through our department and our county, it's not dead. There's struggles. I'm not going to sugarcoat that at all. There's struggles, and the way that you looked at things 30 years ago, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, is different. But we we got it crammed down our throat that volunteerism's dead and we're all doomed and it's not gonna get better, so we might as well give up. And I just refuse to accept that fact as fact, because it's not fact. It's a narrative that was pushed by people that gave up, and that's kind of how I look at it, right? They kind of gave up on their mission, because our true mission is to find our replacements. We have a responsibility to find and train our replacements. And beyond that, everything else we do is just fun and games. We just don't buy into the fact, it's a non-fact that volunteerism is dead. I think that...
But people would disagree with you, Jesse.
No,
There's plenty of folks out here that would say you're absolutely wrong.
And I understand that. And I'm sympathetic to their argument, but the fact is that they've just failed. They've failed to message properly. They failed to market properly. They failed to branding, which is, what Garfield's wanting to talk about. They failed in all those aspects because the sign on the truck is not the thing that's going to work today, right?
Right. I mean, one of the biggest things that I can contribute to this particular point is our organization was founded in 1907 with a horse and literally horse-drawn hose wagon. The fact of the matter is that we had the same constitution and bylaws until 2020. Well, the horse and the hose wagon was gone. But the foundational doctrine of the organization had remained in place until 21. And there's things that you can do to still acknowledge your tradition and history, and God forbid modernize the organization. Fast forward, I always make this joke. Volunteer firefighting is like smoking cigarettes in the 50s. It's free, it's cool, and it's addictive. The reason you don't have volunteers today is because your messaging is off. It's just off. You cannot tell me that coming out of COVID in 2020 that the influx of people that were looking for things to do to get out of their house, that volunteerism's dead. It's not dead. If your organization is struggling with finding recruits, what's dead is your messaging.
Or your creativity. Your
creativity, your marketing, your community outreach. That is what's dead. And don't tell me that because you're in a small town, you can't get volunteers. That's not the case. Now, we could go ad nauseum just on this one point, but the fact of the matter is that there's a certain point there where, are you protecting the organization? Are you protecting people inside the organization? That is a whole nother podcast in itself. But the fact of the matter is that if you're doing what's best for the organization, you're going to modernize the organization to always make sure that people are coming in the door.
To Jesse's point, one of the things that we've talked about at our station is, like you say, we've got to find and recruit for our replacements. I look at it and I challenge everyone to say, what we're doing now and the foundation we're building now is for 30 years from now. So the young people that are here now, this is their department, and they're going to be the ones that are working to build the next generation for their department. And that's really our challenge, and recruiting is just a part of that.
So introduce yourself, because we didn't get that in there a while ago.
Well, I'm Garfield. So I work a lot in the healthcare industry. I consult with small businesses. My primary sector is healthcare, small independent practices, but I work with different businesses of different types. And
how long have you been a volunteer firefighter?
How long have I been a volunteer? I'm just in my second year.
Okay. What got you interested in being a volunteer firefighter?
So that is part of the thought process I had in this whole conversation. What brought me into being a volunteer firefighter is many years ago, we lived out in a rural area and I saw different responses. And my idea was I thought I had to have some sort of training and I thought I had to just know all this stuff before I ever got involved. Come to find out that wasn't the case. And there were a few incidents that happened, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. That's like adrenaline with a purpose, right? And so what finally opened the door for me is we had a call not too far from our house. Actually, my son called in and said, hey, there's a fire that's been left alone. The wind's picking up. Embers are going everywhere. They said, hey, we'll get somebody there to you pretty quick. He stayed there. Our department showed up, and one of the younger guys on the department just looked at him and said, hey, why don't you come join in with us? And then, once he did, and I kind of saw how that was just kind of that open door. And I thought, really, that's something I'd really always like to do, but how much time am I going to have to spend for training? How much, I can't take weeks off and all this kind of stuff. But once I realized how simple it was to really get involved, then it just was a no-brainer.
Okay, excellent. Now,
I love that the son got the dad involved. That is such I think a unique situation, and so I love exploring those kind of topics because I found another family where the son got involved first and then got his mom and dad involved. And a lot of times you think it happens the other way, right? The parents have been around, the grandparents, but I love that story. That to me is. If you can get a bunch of young people involved and get their parents involved, I mean, that's a huge success.
Yeah, I think for me, and I'm going to go back to what I said before, and thinking about this over the course of the last week after we had the conversation, is I think there's two things that we really miss that are different than what volunteerism used to be in the years before, when you talked about the 40s through the 70s, 80s, 90s. Back then, people knew where your door was. And I think they had a pretty good idea of how to get through that door. And now a lot has really changed over the course of the years, because when we talk about getting our message out to people, we're trying to send a message in a really noisy world. We're trying to get people's attention when everything else in this world is trying to get people's attention. And so I agree. I don't think volunteerism is dead. What I think volunteerism is I think it's challenged against all the other distractions that are reaching out, grabbing people for their time, for their effort, and for their money. And if you also look and the GoFundMes and all the other things that you can give your money to, you kind of begin to take that route of saying, well, I want to give back. Then, maybe if I'm giving money, I'm giving back.
Well, and it's not just that. It's the Netflix. It's the Bass Club. It's all of those things that, from the video games to everything else, that just piles into it.
Church, right? Kids' school events. The fact of the matter is the typical working American doesn't work 40 hours anymore. They work 65. I mean, there's always make this joke. It's a trick question. What's the single largest industry in the United States? No one ever gets it right. It's marketing. The success of the American system is marketing.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is from the second you wake up and people start scrolling through social media to watching news to listening to the radio, on and on and on, you were bombarded 100% of the time through marketing. And our ability to penetrate and filter the noise is our biggest challenge. It's not the fact that people won't volunteer. It's the messaging, it's the communication, it's the ability to sit there and say two things. This is one of the biggest arguments that I have for being a volunteer firefighter. There's nothing wrong with donating money to the Red Cross. The difference is that if you do volunteer firefighting, whether it be through literal firefighting or EMS, the impact that you make on the community is definitive and palpable. It's in your hands. You're making that difference for the second. When you donate to a major organization or maybe a pet shelter or whatever, you don't actually know where that money's going. Is it going to buy cat food? Is it going to keep the lights on? Is it going to pay for the vet? Is it going to pay for warehousing? Is it going to ship fuel? You don't know. You just know that you made that physical donation. Whereas if you're a volunteer, particularly a firefighter, your donation is immediate. It is implied directly into the community. And then, another common saying is that today we're an instant gratification society. I would argue use that to your benefit. Use the fact that your actions on scene are immediately recognized by you. Your time given is recognized in the help and the aid rendered. Perfect example of this. 10 minutes ago, we had the classic cat in a tree call. Okay? I cannot believe how many of these calls we get. But the fact of the matter is that they're going to scamper up the tree, they're going to snag a cat, and they're going to give it to an old lady or a little kid, and they're going to be thrilled. You don't get that when you donate physical money to an organization. You don't get that instant gratification.
Right.
So we're seeing smiles and agreement and head nods over here. So chime in for us, Kim, and let thoughts on that.
Well, my husband, he's a firefighter. My husband always said, I've never seen a cat stay in a tree, but I think people call, and you're right, that immediacy. I like that notion, Matt, that it's like what you're doing has an immediate impact on your community. And sometimes you're dealing with things that are horrendous and tragic. And yet I know from hearing these stories that firefighters and EMS personnel will still get thanks and hugs and tears, even if somebody couldn't be saved. Just the effort of trying. And that's an immediate feedback loop for you. You don't have to wait for the city council to recognize you or a plaque, right? You get it right then. And I think using that to your advantage as you're doing your marketing is an excellent idea. And so from my perspective, if I can help tell those stories, these aren't my stories to tell, but they're stories that are important to tell. And now I have a mechanism and a megaphone and an ability to do that. So I love hearing these ideas that folks have. I've talked to so many folks in the past 7-8 months, and they said one of their best recruitment tactics is on scene. And somebody says, hey man, thank you so much for whatever you did. And that person responds, you can do this too. We're not superheroes. We just train and we show up every week. Hey, our meetings are Thursdays at 7. And they've actually gotten people to come out. And I think there's that immediacy as well. Like you're showing somebody, I came to the call, I answered it, I'm here, I helped. You can do it too. And so you kind of bring people into the fold from that perspective. And Garfield kind of touched on it. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to already be a trained firefighter to join up. And I believe that SFFMA is geared to help the volunteer side of the fire service with training and certification that works for your schedule. I mean, I think pretty much everyone on your side of the table over there, I think you all have full-time jobs, correct?
Correct.
Like you all do. Yeah, right. So you've got that going on, but you also answer the call or a lot of the calls when you get toned out. I think that's also an important piece to let people know that you can still have a full life and do all the things you need to do. This can just be something you add to it. And when I hear things like people will say, either in person or on social media, I don't have time. I don't have time to go do something, and I don't get paid for it. And I read something somewhere. It might have been somebody's comment or a meme or something, but it was like it's actually one of those jobs that you get paid in so many other ways than money, and it's almost like it's not quantifiable. The payment is how you feel after you do what you do.
I think once you get started, you make time because it becomes
Absolutely.
it becomes part of your identity. It becomes part of who you are, and you feel like you want to make that call. You want to be there for that person in their darkest hour, or to get the cat out of the tree. But you'll be surprised how much time we waste doing so many other things, where we could be doing this in more of a constructive manner. And I think that when you get in and you really see it and you understand it, you begin to make time. It becomes an important priority for you.
Well,
I believe that people make time for what they want. When people say I don't have time, I say, you get like every Sunday, I get a little notification from my iPhone that says how much screen time I had that week. And sometimes it's 2 or 3 hours. Now I'm using my phone for work, but the point is I have time. I do volunteer work on my own. It's not related to a fire department. But I've almost always done from the time I was 12 years old and I was a candy striper, but it's just been ingrained in me. And so I've tried throughout my life to do different things and be part of my community. Not everybody does that, but then they'll say, well, I don't have time. And I go, well, you had time to sit around and do nothing for 3 hours, but scroll TikTok. So you do have time, but you make time for what you want to do. That's my belief.
Well, I always just tell them, what are you doing between midnight and 6 a.m.? Because sleep's optional, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's 4,000 ways to quantify this. I mean, and I don't really want to go down this rabbit hole, but if you only have 10 or 15 calls, and we're a busy department, we just came off of, I think we had a 6-month run where we were plus 150 calls a month. And the fact of the matter is that if you make 4 to 8 calls a month, there's a definitive value to me in that person. And I think one of the big misnomers out there is, particularly in the volunteer world, is that call volume equals or is equivocal to worth. And I'll be real frank about this. You're wrong if you think that's the case. If you're able proportionally spread across the department to squeeze 1 or 2 calls a month out of someone, there's value in that. Now, is it 1 or 2 calls a month and they never show up to anything else, particularly the training? Okay, then we got a debate there. But if they're making the meetings, they're making the training, but they're still catching this tentative low call volume, don't you dare sit there and say that there's no value in that individual.
Well, and I'm a prime example because I've sacrificed call volume for other duties in the department, right? I spend dozens of hours a week working on training stuff, record keeping, you name it, just stuff that in regards to training.
Right. Well, and we'll segue for just a second here. So the traditional adage is that 10% of the membership does 90% of the work. And I've taken that and I've stolen that and I've kind of twisted it. And it goes into finding value. It's particularly a young member, new members' perspective, where they sit there and say that your worth is equivalent to call volume. And the fact of the matter is when I have this discussion with our new members, our young members, I sit there and I explain, at the end of the day, your total call volume, your total effort at the organization represents 100%. What I really need from you is 90% call volume and 10% operations. And when we get to the officers, I need 90% of whatever their job title is and 10% call volume. And when we get to the admin, the chiefs, it's 90% call volume and 5% operations and 5% call volume. Get away from this stigma that the only worth that a member has is when they sit there and only go to calls. Because particularly with our organization, I don't know what this number is. I can't imagine that 40% of our total workload is call volume. 60% is maintenance, testing, inspections, training, meetings, participation in public events, community education, recruiting, physical representation with yourself. God forbid that you take time off with your friends and family. I encourage that. I tell people all the time, there's 500 things more important than our organization. Go do them. If you have time, make calls with us. We're an organization that has a particularly high call volume. And the one thing that I emphasize with people is it is okay to take time for yourself. Because the fact of the matter is that I'll never be able to control call volume. But what I can do for the membership is control the ratio of call volume that's a burden upon you. How do I do that? Increase the membership.
Right.
If we have 2,000 calls a year, 12 people can't do it. They can't. That's an impossible number, and you need to figure things out. But if you have 2,000 calls a year spread across 70 members, that'll work. We finally have the classic, that dog will hunt. And that's, I don't care what our call volume is. It's high, period. No one cares. The fact of the matter is your responsibility is you need to cover it. But it's a lot easier to cover a high call volume with a high membership total. At the end of the day, me and another chief always make this joke to each other. If I gave you $1 million or 10 members that covered 70% of your call volume, which one would you take? It's the membership every time. Because there's no amount of money that equals the membership. None. There's no way it works for you.
And I think that's a solid point. And I think it rings true to what Kim sees at the state level and all that. Like the buy-in and becoming the member and buying into the organization, whether it's the state organization or your department, and being a part of it for the long haul and buying into the principles of it just carries you so far in that stuff, right? It bridges a lot of those problems right out of the equation to where you're figuring it out. I see the departments that I see struggle are the departments that are not buying into the state organization. They're not buying into training. They're not buying into doing something to advance their position, right? You've got to be working on all those things. And the fact is, and we've talked about it a lot, we're terrible at that part of it as volunteers and as departments. The whole self-image, the marketing side of it, the branding side of it, that is so far out of the wheelhouse of 90% of the volunteer firefighters out there. And the handful that are knowledgeable in that, because they're scattered around everywhere, they just get drowned out by the other members that go, oh no, we can't do that. We can't have a Facebook. That's where the devil lives. We can't do that. That's the mentality that gets. And is there departments and people that have been burned on social media? Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. We've had them. I mean, but we've also had old guys that just wanted to crucify some kids for making a TikTok that was benign and harmless, and it was probably actually a good recruiting tool, but they couldn't see past the fact that they were doing something on social media.
Right.
I think.
So I got a question for y'all. I'm sorry, Garfield. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want to hear your question.
Well, I just want to know what you think about the idea of reminding people. Like when I do some of the outreach, I'll say, there are a lot of departments out there that don't need you to drag a hose into a fire. They might need you to be a diesel mechanic and work on a truck. They might need you to help with fundraisers. They might need you to help with bookkeeping. Is that an angle that you guys have taken as well? Like, I think there are folks that say, well, I can't fight fires, which I don't think is true. But I think there are other jobs, right?
So our board meeting last week, this subject came up, and this was part of something that you had brought up, and we were very focused on what we do: running calls, taking care of vehicles. That's it. And we did have somebody not too long ago that said, "Hey, I want to be a part, but yeah, I mean, it was an older female lady. I don't want to say older, but maybe a seasoned individual, and so she didn't want to go in, and she doesn't want to fire train, and she's not, going to do extrication of vehicles or anything like that. She said, I just want to support." Well, we said, "Hey, that sounds really good," but what we did is we did a really poor job of figuring out what that support really meant, because we're so dead set on doing everything ourselves. We'll take our air packs off. We'll change the bottles. We'll reach in and get our bottle of water. We'll do all those things. And so she came back and said, "Hey, I don't feel like I'm really contributing. Maybe I need to go to the fire training. Maybe I need to do these things." And we said, "Hey, no, we need to do a better job of allowing you to be a support person. We need to learn how to use you. We need to do a better job of defining that and teaching ourselves how to use you." And so I think it's very important, because I don't think we utilize that enough. And I just want to say, I think our department is very similar to so many other departments that are out there. And I think the faces would be different, but I think the circumstances are a lot the same. And so I would agree that we don't typically use all those other roles in the way that we could, and therefore we focus back on running calls, kind of like you spoke to earlier,
Right.
Matt.
Well, I can tell you, up until just very recently, we routinely turned away people unless they committed to starting as an interior firefighter. And I mean, I wasn't chief at the time, and I'd sit there and it felt like I was in a Geico commercial, because I'd be like, "That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. You have people offering to help you and free up resources, transition people into things that they're capable of, comfortable with, want to do, and you're turning them away. What the hell's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
God.
I think when I look, and after the conversation last week, I had a lot of thoughts about this subject, and I think there's a direct parallel between volunteer fire departments. I'm going to say the majority of them. We could probably take out some of the bigger departments, but I think there's a direct parallel between volunteer fire departments and all small businesses across the country. They are very much alike. The problem is, and there's a saying that goes along with this, and it says that the products and services that are provided by a business are not the same as the business that provides those products and services. And we tend to look at the technical level of a business. We don't really look at the process or the leadership or the management parts of that level. We look at the technical part of what we do. So in our case, we look at running calls. We look at the hoses. We look at managing our equipment. But we don't get in and we don't look at the processes. We don't look at the marketing. And this is kind of what you mentioned a while ago, Jesse. Those things just really aren't there. We look at the very basics of it. And so if all we really do in our departments, again, just like every other small business in the country, if we only focus on the product or service we provide, then we won't get to those other levels of support. We won't get to those other levels of process. We won't get to those other levels, like you mentioned, Matt, I need my other officers to run X percentage of calls, more percentage of operations, those types of things, until we start to really define and see that there are layers that really operate in a business. And I just thought that was kind of interesting, because I've in my mind, I've thought, why didn't I really see this before? Or why didn't I really think of it before? But until we had that conversation last week, I just didn't really make that parallel. And and I think it's one of the underlying challenges that we're going to have. And once we realize that and recognize it, then we can move into the next level of how do we begin to fix some of those things.
And that's kind of that epiphany, right? You just had that epiphany about that. So I often question, like, if we're a business out there and we're striving to grow and do all that stuff, we're going to spend 5-10% of our revenue on marketing, right? Mm-hmm. But you go into every one of these departments and their budget for that stuff is zero. And
the only thing I want to steal is, and their communication is dead wrong.
I'll give you that one too.
Go ahead.
But if you're not budgeting and planning for your growth as a department and how you're going to attract new people and do these things, and you're just relying on happen circumstance, mm-hmm. which is what you're doing at that point, how do you expect it to...
Well, most businesses in itself, I mean, again, going back to my comparison, most businesses in itself believe, if I just provide more product and service, then everything will begin to kind of take care of itself. And that's not the case, because you have to be intentional about all these other elements.
And I agree with you. And I'm the world's worst business owner, and I'll just tell you this right now. I spend zero on any of that. But I own a business for a lifestyle, and I want it to get to a certain level. And I don't necessarily want the headache of going to that next level. So I'm fine as long as I'm where I'm at. But I know that's what my goal is, mm-hmm. right? So it's fine if you know that's what your goal is. And I can kick it in and do whatever I want at any time, and I know that. I've ran the businesses where marketing was 15-20% of my budget because it was that growth aspect of the business and trying to build something from nothing. I just choose not to, so I'm not a good example, but but I understand the concepts of it.
But you see the relation between the two.
Right.
And so we've got to move to a position mentally that says we have to kind of step back from just that technical level of what we do and begin introducing those other layers that do focus on these other elements of recruiting, retention, people, resource, process, those types of things.
So if someone out there in the world, here's this podcast, I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask for you guys to discuss, if you have a marketing budget in your department, what are you spending money on? Where do you concentrate your efforts? Like, my answer wouldn't be relevant because what I do is so different from what y'all do. But I would love to know, like, from a department level. I mean, are you talking about money to boost your stuff on social media? Are you talking about swag? Are you talking about postcards that you mail out? Like, where does the budget go? What has been successful for you?
So I'll toss it to Matt, because we've had, again, that limited success, right?
So, particularly from my perspective, I've always made the bold statement that there's no reason that a fire department can't be profitable. And you know, you get kind of a cross look when you make that statement. And the question is this: I think one of the big problems that the departments are truly starting out with where you're at is, okay, fine, we're going to market. You're forgetting the most basic element question. What the hell are you marketing? Mm-hmm. Okay, you have to find an identity. You have to figure out what your message is going to. You have to figure out, at the core of it, what are your needs? And coming off of that, once you have a basic concept, there's another thing that's completely missed here. Okay, fine, you're going to market. Where the hell are you going to send people once you're marketing? Where? Okay, fine. Are they going to walk up to the station door? Well, if you're a really rural department and you don't have, we benefit from this culture of people hanging out at the stations. If you don't have that, where the hell are they going? So before you even answer the question of how are we going to market, the question is where are you sending them to? So at the end of the day, and you have to have a place to send them. And it may be an email, it may be a phone number, it may be a website, whatever. But if you're not answering where are we sending and who are we trying to target, then just randomly marketing's not going to work. Now, the next part of this is, and I mean, I kind of gave the answer away in those previous two responses, but the fact of the matter is that if you're trying to get 18-year-old kids on the department because you need a little injection of youth and energy into your organization, don't advertise in the newspaper. That's the worst idea on the face of the earth. Maybe you're the other side of it. Maybe you have a whole bunch of young kids. Fine. Hit the newspaper. You can bring in some older, mature adults, that classic 55 plus generation, bring them in. They'll tamper down the youngins. Okay? You might be a really rural community. I assure you, those kids, they're on social media. That's the kicker to this is before you even remotely try and address this, you have to figure out who you want to try and grab, where are you going to try and grab them from, and then the last part of it is actually spending the money. I'll tell you this, from our perspective, we started with the idea of a website, and it's not that the physical website would ever recruit anyone, but it gave us a place to send people to. Mm-hmm. And I can't begin to describe it how critical that is. Because here's the kicker for the website. Total dollars wise to get our website opened up was about
$4,000.
I think it was right at $4,000. And here's the kicker. We didn't build the website ourselves. Why? Because we suck at messaging and we suck at marketing. Go pay someone to build a website for you. Here's the next thing I'll compound on this. Our entire website, it's not remotely based on what transaction ratio, transmission, differential, special tires are on the truck. No one cares. Sorry. No one cares about that. If you are wanting to recruit people, then you have a website that's built, designed, and engineered to recruit people. Novel concept. But again, our website isn't the recruiting platform. That's the landing page. What we did was specifically focused on Facebook. Here's a sneaky squirrel idea. Facebook is one of those things, and social media in general is one of those places where people have a tendency to just get, I would argue, overreactionary. Okay? The fact of the matter is that we're in a modern age. People communicate differently today than they did in 2000, 80, 60, on and on. There's nothing wrong with posting anything on Facebook. Should you be cognizant of the scene that you're posting? Yes, obviously. Okay? One thing that we did, and we highly encourage this, was particularly because we have a large wildland urban interface, we told our members that whenever you're getting water, for the love of Christ, make sure you post something on Facebook. Be the first one. Here's the kicker. The major news outlets are going to pick you up. Sooner or later, if you keep throwing and you keep throwing and you keep casting and you keep casting, sooner or later you're going to be the first one to post on a major incident that people are going to gather on. Okay? Now, let's be the responsible adults that we all are. Why don't you actually provide information to the public that's consuming your information? On the flip side, they start following your page. All of a sudden, you start having a major social media posting and following. Mm-hmm. In our particular case, Granbury's only 11,000 people, but our actual following's 20,000. It's literally that simple. It was literally that simple. We have more followers on Facebook than what we have in our town. What was our secret sauce? Go forth and post on wildland fires. Let's take it one step further. Let's say you have a bad accident on a major highway. You don't need to post the gory photos. No one's interested in that. But what you can post traffic delays, traffic rerouting, highways closures, on and on. You can become a physical source of information to your community. They're going to follow your page just strictly out of the information.
Yeah.
You can almost become your own little news department, right? You're there
Correct.
on scene. You don't even have to send it to whatever newspaper or news station. You're providing the information directly to people. I found that so I've worked for government agencies the past 8 or so years. And I was, for a short time, I was a journalist. I actually became an editor of a newspaper. You ever heard the phrase, if it bleeds, it leads? Mm-hmm. Okay, so apply that to Facebook or any social media now when it comes to a volunteer department or really any department. When you're providing the information directly, and again, avoid the gory stuff. You don't need to show any cars or bodies or anything. You never should do anything like that. But that information that Matt just mentioned, people gravitate toward that. So the times when we got the biggest boosts on any of those social media for the groups I just mentioned, it's a little sad to say, but it totally makes sense. Accidents, fires, freezes, floods. And sometimes when I was a journalist, it was the occasional scandal. But for a government agency, the way that we got the most followers was being the first one to tell people what was going on.
Right.
And if you had a visual, even better. Like I made, my biggest thing with marketing, any communications at all, is building relationships. That is, I think, fundamental. So I got to know all the fire chiefs, all the police chiefs, all the everybody chiefs. And hey guys, you're out on the fire scene. Can I have a photo to share on Facebook? Sure, Kim, here you go. And it's that kind of content, that information that people, they really absorb it. And then you find more followers and you build your audience. I think that's exactly what you should be doing in departments all across the state but here's where I think the challenge comes in. I know plenty of departments that are very active on Facebook, constantly putting stuff out there, all the road closures, blah, blah, blah. I've also seen a ton of departments that haven't posted anything since April, right? And this is October. So it's the finding the person to do that. Who's that person going to be? Remember earlier you mentioned like people are coming in and saying, I want to volunteer, but I don't want to fight fires. Could you find someone like that? Mm-hmm. They don't have to be an 18-year-old. I am in my 50s and I post on social media, right? So you just need to find the right people doing the right job. That's my belief. So is that something that you could tell other departments? Is that an option that to ramp up your social media, you gotta post on it?
Right. Well, and it boils down to this, and it's, Garfield kind of alluded to this too. The fact of the matter is that the organization has to embrace this concept of, and it's 5,000 different concepts. Okay, it could be we want to grow. We want to communicate. We want to have better public relations. We want to have better public ed. We want to have more recruitment, more retention. Fact of the matter is that it's all directly tied to each other.
Yeah, it's a big circle, and it just goes together.
And the problem is that everyone gets myopic about it. And they sit there and say, well, social media is the devil, and we can't post this because in 1937, there was X, Y, and Z event, and it ended up in the newspaper a month later. Well, you know what? The fact of the matter is that sometimes people are just going to screw up. It's all right. Fall on the sword. Just straight up admit, we screwed up. We truly did not mean for this to happen, and move on. It's not that big of a deal. The generation that you're trying to protect, quite frankly, due to the internet and just the freedom of information that's available, the fact of the matter is that people are more exposed to things today than they ever were last year or the year before, much less 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, perfect example, current times. We have up to the second drone-fed information of a major global conflict that's brewing. And you're worried about giving traffic updates? You've got to modernize. You don't have to abandon the history and traditions of your organization, but you are literally a dinosaur and you're looking up at the meteorite coming in, or in this case, the asteroid coming into the atmosphere. You have to figure out how to embrace a new age. And it doesn't have to be this radical transition. You're not amputating anything. You're literally just saying, why don't we try that?
And go ahead.
I just want to say, I think to your point, Matt, embracing the newness. I mean, if you look at the younger generation, you brought up social media, but the younger generation is all about technology, and it's got to be it's got to have different cool elements. I mean, they want something that's exciting. They don't want old ratty logos and things like that. They want to see that newness, that upgrade. They want to see that, the shirts and the T-shirts are cool, that kind of stuff. And so you really have to cater to that element. And again, going back to, do you want that crowd? Yeah, of course you want that crowd. But at the same time, you have to look at what are we doing to attract the younger generations, the things that are going to really get their attention. And I want to go back to something else that you said a while ago, and that was, Kim, you brought this up, is connection. And people want to connect. We're social animals, right? So even if we're just looking at updates and we're just looking at all the posts that are on social media, we're building that relationship. And through that relationship, we're starting to see the image. We're starting to see who you are. We're starting to see the personality of that department come through. And what I alluded to earlier is, people find your door, but how do they know it's open and it's open for you? When you can begin to tell that story of who you are and present that image, that's what gets people to begin walking through that door, because they go, that's a lot like me. Or I can see myself in there. I'm not an outsider anymore. 23 years ago when I called in a fire and I loved seeing all the lights and everything else, where I said, adrenaline with a purpose, I just was like, I wouldn't know how to get in there. I can't do anything like that. But making that connection like you're talking about is really opening that door.
So I have a question for y'all. I'm sorry, Jesse. Let me ask it real quick because my brain will forget it. So if you take kind of all of the stuff that we've been talking about and you say, well, you want to recruit younger folks, you really have to recruit the lifeblood that's going to come in and replace folks someday. How do you bridge that gap between, let's say, some of the older folks who are a little resistant to some modern things? How do you bridge that gap? How do you get those folks on board with saying, hey guys, we modernize or die, right? We move forward or we're done. I'm not sure that departments out there have all got that right or even come to that conclusion that they have to do that. So when you see this resistance and you see the idea that, well, we don't want these young kids in here, blah, 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 blah. How do you get past that? What's the key there?
So training is the key to that, 100%. So any problem in your department can be fixed through training, no matter what it is. And that's a problem. I'm going to go back to a story, and this is a story of the other department that I was chief at and president of. So some 10, 12 years ago, we had a guy that joined the department. This guy was gung-ho, older guy, in his 50s at the time he joined, but the guy was I'm just going to call him a social media whiz at that point in time. He had multiple Facebook pages and groups that were 150, 250,000 followers on some of these pages. And it was all a marketing thing. And he was one of his pages was Texas firefighter page, or Texas volunteer firefighter. The page isn't there anymore. He kind of moved on from it because the department literally in a meeting votes, no, we can't do that. We can't have a Facebook. And I'm over there just shaking my head and looking at the floor and just like, guys, understand, he's already figured this out. We can ride this wave and it's going to be great. And just give him the reins. Give him the reins. And the department as a whole just was not going to let that happen, despite my efforts or anyone else's efforts to get them on board with that. And now that department would kill to have that, right? It's kind of the beginning of the end. And you're going to die that death of 10,000 paper cuts. But back to the training thing, because that was one of those missed opportunities. And I realized it and I saw it, but I was the only one. But you've got to, there's a couple things you have to do with new people, whether they're old or new. One, you've got to get them trained as fast as you can to a level that's operational. And once you do that and you've set that minimum standard, and for us, the standard is pretty high because we're thriving and growing, so that standard is like full firefighter 2. Like we expect that within the first year of membership.
Yeah. Real quick, shameless plug, SFFMA helps you with that a lot.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's SFFMA, even through the dark and bright times. We've always been part of SFFMA because it gave us that groundwork.
Yeah. And
thank you.
And that's literally the key. That if you don't understand how to make it work and how to navigate that, ask somebody. Like I spent a lot of time figuring out, and I've spent a lot of years navigating that system and figuring out what to do and how to make it work. But we're to a point now where we're literally within the first 6 months of somebody's membership before they may not have tested, but they have all their training. It's done for that initial training deal. And then we give them some time to get that testing done. And that's why I say that year, but we don't hold back on that part of it. And that's what one of the millions of different keys to the success that we're having right now is that. It's not dragging our feet on getting the people trained, getting them acclimated to the department, getting them involved. The sooner we can get them running calls, the faster they're going to become addicted, right? And as soon as we get them addicted, we have them. We have them at that point. And the ones that we turn over are the ones that they literally misunderstood the amount of time and effort, or they are not mature enough. We lose some to maturity, and we lose some to the fact that life carries them away in a different direction. And we can't control any of those three things, right? Their misconception, we have no control over that other than we try to prepare them. Their maturity level, we can try on that one, but we truly don't have control over that. And their life problems, we have zero control over that. So people flush out, but it's not to the point, it's not 90% of them leaving.
Right.
What's your average retention time?
So we're kind of crazy. We're 7 years. Our average volunteer is with us 7 years.
What about you, Garfield?
I don't really have a good handle of that number, but if I went through and looked at the list of how many people started right now, I would say the average is at least 10 years if I took out about 3 or 4 people. So,
wow.
But I think that also speaks that we haven't brought in a lot of new blood over the course of the recent years either.
And we're bringing in 3 a month,
right,
kinda on average. So
right. I want to go back and I want to answer your question from a little different perspective. You said, how do you bring in the new for when the old is really, very dogmatic?
Yeah, bridging the gap.
And how do you bridge that gap? And before I answer this question, I just want to say that, I want to give a lot of praise to the people at our organization and our station, because they have embraced this, and it's hard to let go of tradition. It's hard to let go of who you are. And if you really think about it, then what's embedded in a lot of people that have been there a long time is part of this is part of who you are and who you are of what you do. And so when you begin to change things, you kind of begin messing with somebody's identity, right? And so we looked at this and said, the most important thing to us is we never lose that. We never lose that legacy. And so we've really built a lot of narrative around our legacy, and that we can't really move forward and we can't build the image of the future unless we bring our legacy with us. And so that's one of the things that we're doing to help inspire this change and to inspire, everyone to be on board about some of the new things that we need to do and how we need to recruit and how we've had to change our bylaws and, how it all works. But I got to give everybody a lot of credit because it's really been embraced well. And it's a work in progress. It's not an overnight thing. This conversation's been happening since the beginning of the year.
Well, and the minute it's not a work in progress, and the minute you think you have it figured out, you're going the other way.
Right.
I mean, you just lost ground at that point. It's the constant, and it's not beating your head against a wall, right? There's success all along the way, and it's focusing on those successes and not just focusing on the downfalls of what goes wrong. It's
incremental growth,
right,
and incremental change.
Yeah. It's whether you believe you can or cannot. You are correct.
One thing I want to add to this.
That's a great point.
Is, and I've talked to Jesse and Gene about this. For a long time, while I've been on Granbury, I have always felt alone's the wrong word, okay? But I've always been heavily committed to the progression of the department. And this is, I'm so lucky as chief. And it was the perfect storm in the benefit. I have not just one or two or three. I have like 6 people that we all agree on the general, where is the department going? What are we trying to accomplish?
Vision.
Where are we trying to go? And all I can say is that is such a rare luxury. Here's my advice to anyone that's listening to this. Go recruit. Mm-hmm. Okay? Inside your department, I promise you, those people are in your department. When did our organization actually start to change? It was before I was chief. That's when it started to change. There was this core group of people that said, by God, we can go further. We can take it further. And just got lucky. Fast forward, Jesse joined, Gene joined, our chaplain joined, and we had like this most incredible group of people that joined in the last 2, 3, 5, 7 years. Add to the retention part, we magically didn't chase them away, and it's all coalesced into me being lucky enough to be chief. As I assure you, it has nothing to do with me. And all of these people working to see the organization progress. And the fact of the matter is you don't need 10 people for that to happen. You just need someone to help you. That's where it starts. So don't sit there and be pessimistic that you're all by yourself. I will sit there and poke at you at that individual a little bit and say, you're not by yourself. Damn it. Go recruit. Figure it out. Get some people on your side. Figure out a way to continue the organization. Grow, build, develop. Have ideas. Have arguments. Have discussions. If you're the one that's sitting there trying to lead the charge on this, but you're not doing recruiting, well, for all intensive purposes, you're killing yourself. You can't sit there and try and be Pinky in the Brain and not do anything to go with anything in your agenda is a strong word, okay? Because at the end of the day, no matter how great the idea is if you sit there and just stew on it and sit there and fold your hands under your arms and go, man, no one will listen to me, you're part of the problem. Mm-hmm. Because the fact of the matter is you're not doing due diligence to your own organization, to your fellow brothers and sisters, arguably to the chief. You don't know. The chief might actually be open to it. He's been waiting this whole damn time for someone to come to him with an idea.
And it all ties back into that purpose and something bigger than yourself, right? We push that out there that this is something bigger than you, be part of something that's bigger than you. But we hold that back. And we don't specifically, but as the fire service, we hold that back and there's individuals and departments that just don't want it to be bigger than they are. They want to be the biggest thing
right
there. And it just sticks a fork in it, it's done.
Yeah. And I think that's a whole different conversation.
It is.
I want to you asked a question a while ago about, what do you do, social media, those types of things. But I think at our roundtable, we had another chief that's in an area north of here, and he does something very different. Yes, they post on social media, but he made the comment that he said, we may be putting you in an ambulance, but there's probably going to be an application on your chest when you go. And he comes from that, like he said, he comes from that Baptist preacher background where he's always talking to people. So he's really kind of a promoter in himself. And so I think one of the things to take away from that is there's not just a single recipe for success.
Oh,
there
keep going.
There are a lot of different ways that you have to find that really fits your station, that fits your strengths. And that's his strength. That wouldn't be my strength. I would be one to really go after social media or something, but you have to really look and say, what am I the best at? But again, going back to what you said, you have to be willing to want to recruit. I mean, you just have to know that you have to bring people in, but don't think that you have to get into this one single-mindedness of, well, this is just how we have to do it. If I don't know social media and I don't have a budget, my budget's really, really low. I can't afford to pay somebody to do it, and we can't do it right, so I'm just going to throw my hands up. No, talk to people like you said. There was a story on scene.
Do it wrong before you don't do it at all.
Exactly. Right? Be the Jerry Jones out there.
Because it goes back to what Kim was saying and just kind of the throwing the pasta on the wall thing, right? if you came to Matt or I and you said, tell me the one thing that has made you successful in recruiting, I can't.
Right.
There's not one thing. It's
so
I think there is.
Thing. I think there's one thing that connects everything you just said, Jesse, because while it may be many things that you've done, and someone just mentioned this word earlier, I think it was Matt, you have to all embrace, or at least a lot of you have to embrace that you're going to do these things. You may try 16 different things and maybe 15 of them don't work, but somebody has to embrace the fact that you want to do them and you have to make it happen. So if I can give a shameless plug, and you can edit this out if you don't want it, but I want to tell you a little bit about what I see from the SFFMA side. This is a many years old organization, right? It's a 147-year-old organization. So one of the things that I've seen, and one of the reasons I took this job, is because I see a board, and these are all volunteer firefighters. These are guys from all over the state, that I see in them this desire, this initiative to say, what has worked in the past is probably not what's going to work now, and they have embraced the change, and they are actually the catalyst for some of the change. They're willing to say, hey, you know what? This organization really needs a little bit of life breathed into it. And maybe we didn't always do things the best way, but we're going to start reevaluating how we do things and how we move forward. And you feel that energy. And when you have the opportunity to work for someone like that or an organization like that, I mean, you jump on it. You absolutely want to be in an organization that is fired up about forward motion. And they don't always all agree, and they don't always all have exactly the same ideas about success or what success looks like and how to achieve it. But they are willing to take the risks. They're willing to let me throw the pasta because, and other folks in the organization as well. It's not just me, of course. So it's a great time to be part of something like this and to have this, I call it an honor, to go and meet folks in the volunteer fire service around the state, to interact with them on social media, email, phone calls, text messages. I'm blown away at the opportunity that I have here and the idea that there's some group of folks that are the leaders, and then you have an executive director, and they all have embraced the idea that we need to do some things. And we don't always know exactly what those things are, but they're not afraid to try. And I think that's where sometimes organizations fail because they're afraid to fail. And if you don't try new things, you risk never trying anything at all. And someone just said it. Was it you, Jesse? Like, do it wrong before you figure out, that
right.
There are better ways to do it, but do it wrong before you don't do it at all. And that's the atmosphere that I'm in now, this environment of, hey guys, we got to do something different, right? You can't do the same thing and over and over again expect a different outcome, because that's the definition of insanity. So we're looking at things from this very different point of view. And I think that's applicable to departments across the state. How you've done things in the past. Maybe you had a fundraiser every fall, a fish fry or whatever, and you got, one or two new volunteers from that, or, whatever your recruitment tactic was, it worked until it didn't. And so I love the idea that it's not one thing, that you can't find the one thing that you could say that's the reason. But it is the idea that somebody is embracing trying those new things and trying different things. Because if Matt didn't embrace that for y'all, I don't know that it would work. Matt, I'm actually inspired by you. I sat there in the round table just as a fly on the wall. And then you guys kind of came over and we had almost like a mini focus group. And, this was at the district meeting last weekend. And I learned so much. I felt like I was peeling back layers of onions and going, oh my gosh, like I didn't know that. I'd never heard that. Or, it was just such a great introduction for me to really understand some things about volunteer departments. And as I'm going around and meeting different folks, I'm finding that is the case. There's a lot to learn, and there's so much, I hate the word passion, but there's so much passion for volunteer departments. The people that believe in what they do, it's part of who they are, it's their identity. And finding the folks that fit into that maybe is a little challenging, especially today. And I think there are a lot of people that would argue with y'all that, volunteerism is dead. They would say it is, even though I know you guys say it isn't. But I think you got to figure out a way to tap into that, whatever it is. I don't know what you call it. It's bigger than me. It's more than just what I do. It's for my community. But I don't know. I think y'all are onto something. I wouldn't know how to distill it and put it into a bottle and sell it to other departments.
Kim, I'm sitting here holding a note up that says me right now. to Jesse and Garfield. So when I joined our organization, in I'm gonna, sounds like I'm bouncing all over the place, but I'm coming back to the core essence of this. I knew the solution to, and this is because of my professional background. I'm actually an airline transport pilot. Fancy word for I fly airplanes. Okay. The answer to everything is training. Okay. I make this statement all the time. If you want to fix a problem, you fix it through training. If you want to change the direction of an organization, you fix it through training. If you want to have a revitalization of an organization, it's through training. Training is the heartstrings of the organization. Here's the kicker. It's not fast. Unfortunately, the one thing I've learned in the volunteer movement, everything moves at like a geological time scale. Okay? You fix it through training. And if by chance that we have any of the executive board members, the president, executive director still listening at this point, here's my 2 cents and a cup of coffee advice to you. Fix it through training. You're literally a training organization. Mm-hmm. You're a training organization. Provide training. God forbid you actually embrace the 1, 12, 500 departments that do training. That is your answer. Embrace the departments that do training. Because the fact of the matter is that what's the needs for our area versus Garfield versus West Texas, North Texas, the Valley, South Texas, on and on and on. Each and every department, oddly enough, they need training. Mm-hmm. Provide training. The answer, the salvation, the promised land, the solution is in training. For Granbury, I got involved in training in 2011. So it took me to 2013 to truly, or 2023 to truly figure it out. But a lot of that was just, and here's the other part of it. I have a unique personality. I have no problem arguing with anyone. And that gives me a distinct advantage because I can sit there and talk to anyone, but it doesn't turn into, the classic fisticuffs and everyone walks away angry. I can have a knockdown, drag out argument and completely lose and then come back tomorrow for more. And that is the one thing that I will tell everyone that's possibly listening. Training. The solution is training. And whether it's the classic stagnant department, whether it's a department image, whether it's you're trying to figure out where you're going, where you're trying to figure out how to literally fix a problem, it's training. And here's the kicker with training. Who does training touch? Old and new. Mm-hmm. And you can use that to your advantage. You pick a topic where the old hands have to teach the new hands. And then you pick next week, you pick something where the new hands are showing the old hands what they're capable of. And it starts that simple. And I don't care how big or how small your department is. The fact of the matter is you need training. SFFMA provides training. Provide training. Don't just sit there and advertise what you physically do in the sense of we represent you, because at the end of the day, that's only a small part of what you actually do. Provide training. Go ahead, Jesse.
Let me jump in right quick.
I think we're all about. Let's all jump in.
Because I I've made the circuits, right? I've taught at tons of area schools. I've been all over the state. I was a vice president of another district on the other side of the state. I've been involved in this for 25 years. And I can tell you the departments that you look at and you go, man, they've got it together. Every single one of them has a robust training program that they're all involved in. The ones that you go, man, I don't know how those guys are making it. They do zero training. Mm-hmm. And if you go look, you'll see that, and it's not here and there. It's everywhere. That's the basis of the point that Matt's making. And if you go look and you see, you'll find those guys, right?
Mm-hmm. I just want to say, I think when you make the point about training, I think you can take it even from a technical level of an organization. So, not just at the level of our fire training and our extrication training and even our medical training, but look at the other areas of the business that an organization could benefit from in training, like how to write better SOPs, how to write those types of things, how to really, leadership training is a big part of it, mm-hmm. and really understanding
grant writing.
What's that?
Grant writing.
Grant writing. Yeah, I mean exactly, and how to look for different areas of income. I mean, like you're talking about. So I think there's a lot of different areas of training that organizations will benefit from, and I just can't disagree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I can tell you this. I know that SFFMA offers, all kinds of training, of course, but one thing that I would like departments to take advantage of is our recruitment and retention workshops. They had a couple this year. I know one was in Pasadena. One is coming up in November in Longview. And when they get together in November or December, they're going to decide where they're going to be next year. So if you have an area in a department somewhere, and maybe you have, 9 or so departments in a county or even a bigger, like a district or a region, you can request that they bring that marketing, recruitment and retention seminar to your area. It's free. And when you attend, if you had to travel or stay overnight or whatever, a lot of that is reimbursable through the SAFER grant. So we offer not just regular firefighter training and certification, which is a huge piece of what we do and one of the biggest values of being a member, but these marketing, recruitment, and retention seminars, I think, give everyone an opportunity to, learn and talk about all the stuff that we're talking about today. And they do a really thorough job. They get down into the nitty-gritty of talking about, stuff on social media, and they offer banners and flyers and actual collateral that you can order and you can have to give out or to post or to hang up or whatever. I see a lot of, handmade signs out in the front of a fire station, and that's fine. But when you use some of the SAFER grant money, you can actually get a marketing recruitment kit sent to you. And it's got this kind of pre-designed thing to it, right? So it's consistent across the board. Anyway, that's just a little side note there, because I think it's important that people remember that we are a training and certification organization primarily, but these other benefits, including things like access to SAFER grant money, will allow them to tap into things like the marketing, recruitment, and retention seminars, and they're free.
And Matt signed up for that in Longview, right?
Yay!
Yeah, no, everything you just talked about. I have my pop-up tent. I have the backdrop. I have the table drop. I have all the recruiting material. I've signed up to go to Longview. Right. Everything that you just talked about, I'm in. Now I'm going Longview. God, don't quote me on the date. I think it's November 4th or 7th.
3rd and 4th, I think it is.
So
I think it's November 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, I think I just know from my personal perspective, and it's exceedingly biased, and a lot of it's personality driven at the end of the day. And Granbury is lucky. We have a solid fiscal support from our city, and I can't undercut that because I'm $1 million a year department.
And that's one thing we don't have to worry about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we can focus on these other things.
And the fact of the matter is that this started with how I joined the organization, and quite frankly, how badly I was treated when I joined the organization, because it was staggering from my perspective that here I am wanting to participate and you won't vote me on. I mean, it was the most archaic, degenerate, backwards thinking on the face of the earth. It took me almost 6 months to be able to ride out on an engine. And for whatever reason, I was stupid enough to stay on the department. Granbury did everything in its power to push me away. Every conceivable step that you could do to turn someone off, I was turned off from it. And
that's not still happening with new recruits, though, is it?
God, no.
No.
Yeah.
No.
God, no. And,
So-
and a lot of that, kind of where you're going with that, I don't want to go as far as to say it was a personal vendetta, because that's not the case. But the next few people that joined after me, I sure as hell embraced them. And that's actually where it changed. I can tell you from my perspective, that's where it changed, because the new people that joined, I personally went to them. And even though, let's be realistic, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I started going through things with them. That's where it changed. It was in 2010.
Well, and my old department had a policy of they literally were going to vote no the first time you showed up to see who came back for the second go, right?
Oh, yeah.
And to me, that's just insane. I was like the first person that made it through on the first go. And that's because I already knew everybody, and they couldn't tell me no. But but that still happens today. And you're literally just throwing roadblocks up for your own success at that point.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I mean, if we're turning away, if anybody is turning away potential recruits, I think we need to, think about why that's. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think
but
that goes
we need
back.
to think about why that's happening.
I think that goes back to what you talked about earlier, Matt. I mean, vision, and really having that vision for the future, and understanding that this is a constant, moving, breathing thing. And if you don't keep that lifeblood in there, your lifeblood is two things: it's people and money. And if you don't keep those two things moving in an organization, you're dead in the water.
Well, it goes back to a couple of the kind of systemic problems that are in emergency services altogether, and it's that old guard mentality that I had to go through this, so I'm going to make somebody else go through this same problem. And so I see it in EMS, right? EMS is struggling to find people. Like paramedics, there's this paramedic shortage, there's all this. But you've got these programs, these paramedic programs that are taking in 25 or 30 people at a whack, and they're paying their fee, and they're getting their SB8 reimbursement from it in the state of Texas that's paying for those people to go to school, and then the school is just immediately weeding that down to 5. Like their only goal is to weed it down to the 5 that are going to pass the national test on the first go. And so through that process, it makes them look good because they have a 100% success rate, but they just killed 20 to 25 people's dream of ever doing this. And they're never coming back. You'll never get them back. They're not going somewhere else to do it. They're done. They're going to go find a different thing to do. And that's a shame. It's a self-inflicted wound. And we can't, as the volunteer fire service, stand to inflict those kind of wounds on ourselves.
But you see it all the time.
You see it all the time.
And it just blows my mind. Now, that said, the one thing I want to add, every now and then you get someone of the department that's a no-go. I get that. I truly do. But I mean, just I'm going to call it territorialism. It's staggering at how many departments that I see in our area that just cut their own throat.
Well, they commence Operation Thin the Herd 5 minutes after they vote somebody on.
Right.
And it just doesn't work. I've taken and that's one of the many things that's successful for our department, right? I've taken a mentality of, I'm getting all these people into my recruit academy, which is firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and Garfield, you did it twice or 3 times.
Yeah.
Just because you wanted the knowledge, you wanted the knowledge and the punishment, but I do everything in my power to drag them through the finish line. I am not there to cut anybody. In fact, if somebody bails on this, I take it personal. Like, it is my job to drag them to the finish line. I want however many start on day 1 to finish on day whatever. And I don't accept, like, I had to go round and round with a girl that she signed up, and then 2 days later she's wanting to drop, and I'm like, no, I don't accept the fact that you're dropping. You can't drop. Like, it doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. We'll work through it. We'll do one-on-one stuff. We'll make this happen.
Did she stick around?
No, despite my best effort. But I take that personally at that point, right? Because I'm the one that's giving up the extra time and energy and effort to make sure that I'm dragging them across the finish line.
But at the end of all of that, you can't take it that personally, because that person just wasn't the right fit. It just wasn't for her.
Right.
And it's probably better to know that at the outset than to try to hang on and recruit and retain someone it's just not for her.
Well, and the reality is she wasn't in our department, so it was another department. I have the luxury of an incredible training facility, a supportive department in a county that fosters and grows volunteer firefighters. So I've taken something that was just kind of started at the department, moved out to the county. Well, now I'm regional. Like, I don't care who you are or where you're from. If you'll show up on some Saturdays and you'll do some online stuff, I'll take you into the program.
Yeah.
Because we're doing it anyway.
Did we ever talk about, like, in our previous conversations and emails, did we talk about whether or not your specific department, Jesse and Matt, if you have the family legacy kind of connection there, or if a lot of folks who are coming in don't already have a connection to the department?
There's some, but it's not a huge part of our department. Mm-hmm. And it's not for any other reason than it's just not. It's not something that we are against or we push away. It's just, it hasn't worked out that way. And I think in years past it has been.
Yeah. I think
Ours
other departments would be interested to hear from y'all about that. Like, if it isn't firefighters' kids coming up, who are these people? How do you find them? I mean, is it going to schools? Like, I jotted some notes down earlier, and I was like, one of the things that I see, because again, I'm like a Facebook troll at this point. One of the things I see is when departments are really visible in their community, and I'm talking, they're at the Friday night football game and the rodeo, and they're in the parade, and they do the national night out, and they have open houses, they have movie nights, like all these great things. I see a lot more engagement with their community. Like, you just look at their Facebook page and see how many people are commenting and liking and sharing and reacting, versus some of the departments that don't seem to be out there and as visible, or they're not posting it anyway. They're not sharing that. So what's the secret sauce for y'all in terms of, okay, you don't have the legacy thing going on. How do you even find young people? I mean, is it truly just, it can't just be dumb luck. I mean, is it social media? Is it that you're out there?
I think the easiest answer to that is that we actually cast a really broad net. We recruit like a drift net. So we do social media, we do word of the mouth, we do legacy, We do recruiting on scene. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, and the discussions shouldn't center around this, but we did a fundamental change in the organization that specifically addresses bringing people into the organization that aren't from the organization. They don't fight fires. They're never on scene. But their whole purpose is to actually create community awareness, public awareness, PR. So when you start sitting there and you're like, well, we're not going to put all of our eggs in one basket. But what we are going to do is start grabbing 2% here, 1% there, 20% there. And when you start taking the average across the board, it results in the last quarter that we've had 17 new members. So
That's phenomenal.
right. Again, volunteerism's not dead. I assure you, volunteerism's not dead. Your messaging sucks.
Messaging is what? Yes, exactly.
Okay. Period.
Yeah, I kind of think that's like the crux of like this whole discussion, how we even got started in that, like when you were doing the roundtable, and I heard you, say some of this stuff that day. Like your messaging is really the key here. So I guess I would need to, I would like to push out to departments, like either through our newsletter, social media, face or website, whatever.
Now,
think more about your marketing and your message. And,
right. And just to give you an idea of what the members are, and we'll just call this last year. So we have a 65 plus year old, nuclear engineer. I'm not sure what this one guy does. But he works at a nuclear plant. On the flip side of that, we have a 25-year-old, same guy from the same facility, and he's not a nuclear engineer. We have a 45, 50-year-old couple. We have a couple of teenagers. We also take members from different counties. Members from corresponding departments that didn't want to respond with that neighboring department. So that I do want to go to down the rabbit hole on that for just a second. We don't poach from neighboring areas. We always make sure that they know that there's a local department closer. This is who you need to go to. The kicker is what do you do when you're a month out, month and a half later, and they're like, yeah, I talked to them, I'm not interested. Well, I'm going to take them. I mean, I have a 22, 23-year-old college kid. I have another 20, 25-year-old, I call him a refugee from California. I have another 40-year-old refugee from California. I have two members that literally didn't last 2 days before I kicked them off of the department. So, I mean, it's not one thing. I would sit there and say that, again, my analogy of the drift net, it's multiple factors. And here's the kicker. I didn't set that up all at one day. That took 8 years to build. And here's the kicker. You don't need 8 years to build that. That's trial and error on my part. Again, we're telling you what to do. Figure out how to get out there and communicate. Get a social media presence. Get an online presence. Figure out how to actually recruit on scene. When you're on scene, talk to someone, a bystander's there. Tell them, join. God forbid you actually engage the local politics, county commissioners, city commissioners, local events. The fact of the matter is one of the most beautiful statements, and it just makes me want to bash my head into a wall. I'll be chief, but I won't do politics. What the hell are you talking about? You literally got elected through politics. you idiot. You have to go do politics. That's the
Right.
way it is. I understand that if you're not a politician out of the gate, you got to sharpen your teeth somewhere. Fine, whatever. But it's a political position. Go do political crap. That's the way that works. So to really come back to your point, it's not one thing. I mean, again, it's 2, 5, 12, 30 different things that all happen. Is the intent to have a new applicant off each encounter? Absolutely not. Repetitive, do it again. Repetitive, do it again.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, the old analogy, even a blind pig's going to find an acorn. That's really the case.
Right.
And we've got three new juniors, which is another avenue that we didn't even touch on. Like, we've got these high school kids that...
Do you have a junior firefighter program?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we do, and it's hit or miss too. All this stuff's hit or miss,
Right.
and it's kind of that all your eggs in one basket thing. Like you that broad net, and some things are going to work at some times, and they're not going to work at other times. Like, it's probably been 2 years since we've had a junior.
God, if not longer.
But the previous batch, we picked, there's 6 members that are stellar members that are all, most of them are officers or lieutenants at this point. Like, they come from that junior program, and they're a success, and they're some of the best members.
Now, real quick, I want to just
I hear
talk.
a lot of folks say, I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
I just want to add on the juniors program. Is there a point where you're just going to want to bash your head into a wall with your juniors program? Guaranteed. Okay? Sorry. Just deal with it. Yeah. That's the nature
It's
of
kind of
this.
the skin you've got in the game, right?
Right. Go ahead, Kim.
Well, I was just going to say that I've heard a lot of folks saying that the junior programs, the Explorer programs that maybe is attached to the Boy Scouts or something else that they're doing they're very specific to that teenage cohort. Those programs seem to be having some success when they are very specifically marketing to that younger cohort.
So,
and I think these junior firefighter programs, so I heard a little bit just recently about a couple different places where they have an Explorer program, but I think when it's attached to that national organization, scouting, that there are more rules and things they can't do, like they can't have any live fire training, not even like with a fire extinguisher and a propane tank that has a immediate off switch. So I think there's some downside, but in general, I think they're seeing some success, and I wonder if other departments are going to start seeing that, maybe because of sharing and social media and stuff. Maybe we can start to get that word out there. But when they don't have the junior program and they're not targeting that specific cohort, some days I think when I see stuff and I go, are you just waiting for people to walk in the door? Because I'm not sure that's going to happen.
Well, no,
But that's
a common
that's
thing.
a historical thing. That is a lot of what happens. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. You get your time is limited, right? We do have 24 hours in a day. And when you run calls, you fix apparatus, you fix equipment, things like that, all your time gets eaten up. And then you say, you know what? We're going to worry about recruiting tomorrow, or we'll worry about this tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes. And so yeah, I do think a lot of times that's what happens. And that's what's happened to us over the course of the last year. We have waited for people to walk through the door. And that's one of the things that we really have to change.
Well, and I'm going to be pretty terse about this. Quite frankly, excuses are like buttholes. Everyone has one and it stinks. I'm sorry. You can't sit there and whine and moan and complain. Oh my God, our department's dying. And you don't have a juniors program. Shut up. Get off your keister and get out there and figure out how to recruit. Just because you had one junior that just rubbed everyone wrong, whatever. First thing I would ask is, why the hell did you put the teenager with the 390-year-old man? That's your first mistake.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm sorry. I get pretty aggressive about this. Damn it, if your department is struggling finding members and you don't have a juniors program, or you advertise in the newspaper once a year, shut up. I just stop. Okay? I'm not saying that Facebook's your salvation, but Jesus, it's literally wake up. If you are trying to build a tomb, you will be very successful in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think too.
So I looked on the website. So the Leadership Development Seminar, which is the one where it's the grant reimbursable, that is Longview, November 3rd and 4th. So it's like a Friday evening and then a Saturday from 8 to 5:30. It's at the Holiday Inn in Longview. And you do have to register, and all the information is on sffmatx.org. Shameless plug again. But I think it's useful for folks to know about this stuff so they can go see, what's out there, what's available. There is help out there. I think that maybe that's the challenge is people either they don't know, or they don't, as Matt likes to say, get off their keister and go find the information. But I think it's out there. I think there's, I would like to see more resource sharing and more best practices sharing, which is kind of my focus when I think about doing, newsletter articles or social media posts. I spend a lot of time putting up the training that departments are doing and letting their community know these folks are out there training so that they can answer the call and be knowledgeable at what they're doing. I've seen, maybe it's a misperception, I feel like I've seen a lot more posts from departments about their training. And if I were to track it back, I would say, I don't know, it feels like I used to see stuff that was like, look at our new truck, or, oh, we had a fish fry, or here's our fish fry. And now I see an emphasis on training, which I really appreciate. And I love seeing it because it shows the work and effort and commitment that people are putting in to be better, to get certified, to do the training, to do the hard work. And so I like what I see out there in the social space. And I try to share that when I can, because I think it's important for other departments to see, hey guys, training, and Matt said it earlier, training is really one of the major keys to all of this. And I think it's great to highlight what folks are doing. Again, in my Facebook troll role, I love to highlight what they do and show they're not just doing the, oh, come on Tuesday night, we'll do some ladder training. Some of them are actually bringing in outside entities and doing, full weekend. I mean, there's a ton of trainers out there. One that I've seen a lot is the MV Rescue. I think he's out of San Antonio or New Braunfels or somewhere. He goes all over the state and they do these intense training programs, and they're reasonably priced. And again, there is some grant money out there. There is some funding available for that kind of thing. You just have to know where to look. So,
yeah, and Kim, I want to dive in real quick here, okay, because I want to specifically talk about Garfield's department. Garfield's department compared to ours is night and day from a fiscal perspective. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I mean, I truly mean this in the nicest way possible, but you guys are as broke as a church mouse.
Right.
Okay. And yet somehow your little itty bitty department, and I would argue through administration, fiscal prudence, they managed, okay? And yet you guys took advantage of the TEACS grants. Mm-hmm. You guys took advantage of the training through SFFMA.
Oh, yeah.
You took advantage of the local training that we provide. And yet here you are. Again, you're still broke as a church mouse. But I would argue in our county, you're one of the strongest departments. Okay? And it's not a fiscal thing. It's because you guys embrace this idea that we will make ourselves better. and this is how. And again, you took advantage of grants, you took advantage of local resources, and again, I would argue you're one of the strongest departments in the county, but even though your revenue stream's one of the lowest.
Yeah.
So for people that are listening, don't give me this damn argument that I'm broke. I'm sorry. The state of Texas has billions of dollars available for you.
We have we actually started this year in on one of the walls, and it's a big piece of paper. We have our grant vision board up there, and it has 1 year, 3 year, and 5 years.
Keep talking. Keep going.
And what are the grants that we want to look at for 5 years? We want a new building. We need these apparatuses. What's our 3-year goals for our grants, and what's our 1 year goal for our grant? And that's one of the things that I think has really kind of helped us begin to look forward and to know that we don't have to always come up with the money. There's a kind of a theme around a lot of departments, and it's, hey, we got to wait until we get our subsidy. And I get that. I understand that. But at the same time, we're also taking the position of we're going to set our plan, and we're going to come up with whatever the grant money is we can. We're going to go work on letters for donations. We're going to raise money wherever possible so that we are not dependent on one source.
And you guys do a fish fry, right?
And we do a fish fry. I mean, that's kind of a yearly thing. We're the fish fry department. But we've also set our goal and set our mind to we can build a new department based on grant money if we do it right. If we look far enough out and we know the process, and we know the apparatus we're going to put in, we know the people we're going to have, we know the training we're going to have to fill that apparatus, to fill that department. And that's one of the things that we've really gone after. And you can walk into one of our rooms, and it's as wide as our wall right now.
And it all boils down to those goals, right? Mm-hmm. And whether it's funding or training or membership, write it down. Make a list. Make that goal. Make it so that everybody sees what the heck you're striving to do. Because whether you're a team, a sports team, or a business, or these fundamental principles of how to organize and do this stuff, it's out there. You don't have to figure that out. Just follow the recipe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'll go back to what y'all said earlier, and I'm going to regress to an earlier comment, and that is, in the world of recruiting and retention, stop worrying about trying to have the answer before you start. I mean, go back. Don't worry about your message. Just get your messaging out. Do things. Make a presence. Become known. Start to build that rapport with the community. Start to build that rapport with the people. I mean, I said this the other day in our roundtable. You all at Granbury have kind of built this brand. You've built an image. But you didn't start out on day one saying, this is our brand and this is our image. This is kind of an evolutionary product that now you have that people begin to see and people begin to connect with, right?
Correct.
I mean, you that wasn't something that you started out. And I think what's happened is, and I'm going to get ahead of myself here, but what's happened is that brand and that image began to occur and began to push itself through Facebook and social media and all the interactions as the culture began to diffuse itself throughout the organization, right? And I would just encourage anybody now, start with something. Just don't wait to think that you have to have it figured out. Start with something. Just like throw the pasta on the wall. It doesn't matter. Try 15 things. It doesn't matter. Figure out what works, but start. Take that first step.
And the one thing
I feel like that should be the theme of this, by the way. When you title it, it should be "Throw the Pasta Against the Wall."
It will be, yes.
Now, Garfield, compound your point. The fact of the matter is, I'm not some sort of fat Moses that's leading the department to a promised land. I'm not. I'm lucky. The department has had a pretty solid foundation that goes generations back. I'm just another person pushing the cart forward. The fact of the matter is that, the next generation, they got the cart next. Mm-hmm. You might be making the first steps right now. Do you have the grand plan? Sure. But will you get there? Let's be honest. Probably not. But if you're putting the proper things in place to take the organization forward, that's a victory. Mm-hmm. And being able to find success in the little things and knowing that there's the potential for that thing to pay off in 5, 10, 15 years. Again, I have the luxury of being in existence since 1907, so I have the classic litmus test. I assure you, nothing that we've done today isn't possible with previous chiefs. It started a long time ago. Mm-hmm. The difference is that I decided to push it forward. And if you feel like that you're starting at ground zero, don't worry about it. Just make the positive changes now. You don't know what they'll be in year 2, year 5, year 15, year 30. Yeah, you might literally be at the end of your career on the department. But the fact of the matter is you'll be able to sit back, smile, and just know, and quite frankly, you might even not be remembered for it. Accept that. That's okay. And know that you did your part to push the organization forward. Mm-hmm. And find justice and solace in that.
Yeah, if you're looking to get your name on a building, the only way you get that is die, right?
Right.
So that's not really a goal.
That's not a goal.
That's not a goal. So figure out a new goal. So, Kim, thoughts?
Yeah. Thoughts. Well, we went through so much, so I'm just distilling a little bit here. I think the idea of just start, maybe that's the thing. It's like just start, just do something. So I think there's a couple of things that I learned from today, and hopefully I can communicate this in the future in the various ways that I can reach out to membership and non-members who might become members someday. Embrace, try, move forward. It's like what's the term I'm looking for? It's not just throw the pasta, but it's kind of like if you do nothing, you will stagnate and die. If you do something, it might not be right immediately, but you will figure it out as you go. And I think the idea of having the junior program is huge. And I think that there is a need to help some of the folks who've been around a while to embrace the new generation. And I sort of disagreed with what one of you said before about, putting the young guy with the 390-year-old guy. That's not necessarily a bad thing if the old guy can embrace the new guy and the new guy can respect the knowledge the old guy brings to the table. So maybe there's something there too that we could tap into, not in this conversation, but just like in general in our outreach and promotion, that, you have to believe that the folks who are coming in the door through whatever recruitment method, they want to be there and they want to learn. They might get ahead of themselves sometime, but you have to give them, I don't want to say you want to, let them do anything they want to do. But you have to give them some freedom and flexibility. And sometimes they have to make some mistakes. Hopefully they're not bad mistakes, but that's where that leadership and guidance comes into play. Now, I say this from an outsider's perspective, not a volunteer firefighter, but I've heard enough now that I think I can say, like, the things that I've learned is you might get the 18-year-old in there who's pretty gung-ho but doesn't know anything. Well, training is such an important factor, But I think having someone believe in him or her, hopefully, and respect them, and I'm going to say it again, embrace the idea that they do bring something to the table that maybe your department doesn't have right now. I think that's a positive step. I think that's the direction that I would love to see people go, is give them a chance. Weren't you young at one point? You know, some of these folks started when they were 18 or 20 years old. And now, Garfield, I know you started a little bit later in life, but you did it kind of because your kid got involved, right?
Right.
I mean, I think there's something to that as well. It's like the saying that I've been using around when I talk to people is, I think word of mouth recruitment, that's kind of the heart of what y'all do. And Garfield, do you think you ever would have looked into this if your kid hadn't?
Probably not, because I wouldn't have realized how to open the door to get there.
Yeah. Well, kudos to your kid for doing it, and immense respect to you for, I mean, I'm looking at you and I'm thinking you're not old, but you're not a spring chicken, right? So I think kudos to you for taking that leap, because that could be a big thing for people, maybe thinking like, why I can't do it. I'm too old, or, I'm too set in my ways, but you did it. I don't know. I think I learned so much today, and I'm not sure that I'm saying any of it very well to repeat it back to y'all, but this was a truly enlightening conversation, and it feels like there is so much work to do, but I love looking at Granbury as an example of some good things to do. And maybe what I want to do is start giving people almost like an a la carte menu of options, try this, and this. And if that doesn't work, try that, and that. And give them ideas, spark the pun intended, spark the fire of what can we do? Obviously, some departments are doing it really well and doing something right, and others need a little help. So I want to help those folks. Anyway, SFFMA is here to help for training and certification and all of that. But I'd like to think that we are also here for other reasons, like the idea that you have these best practices and you can share and you can, kind of give people examples of what's worked and what hasn't. And the other thing that I see about an organization like this is there's power in numbers. So we didn't talk about it. It's not tonight's focus, but I will say, I think it's important to know that SFFMA is also in existence to help with things at the legislative level. So the more members you get, the more people are involved, the more powerful your voice is. Someone said it at a meeting yesterday. A lot of firefighters, they vote, and legislators know that. And so they are listening to what volunteers have to say, firefighters in general. But I think because the volunteer service doesn't seem to have as much, what am I trying to say? Like they don't have as much in the way of, retirement programs and job protections and all of that stuff. But groups like SFFMA are out there trying to change that. So separate conversation, but joining and being a part of something like this gives you more of a voice and more power. So I'll set that aside. Maybe someday, there'll be a conversation about that. But in terms of marketing, recruitment, retention, use the tools that are available for free, that are available through SFFMA, and then we'll look at best practices and what other departments are doing and sharing and trying to plant that seed. Maybe there's just some departments that haven't even really thought about some of the things we've talked about today, and that's okay. I like the idea that we're creating a conversation, having a conversation that might create some energy where people go, oh my gosh, I never even thought about that. If we can get more departments to start looking at things from this different perspective, I feel like we will be moving in the right direction. Sorry, long-winded, but you guys gave me so much to process.
Right. And as we start to wrap this up, one thing that I want people to know, particularly in Texas, so Granbury is where it's at today, oddly enough, because we stayed attached to SFFMA, even particularly through the recent struggles and the challenges that SFFMA's faced and the departments have stayed attached to it. And we stayed attached to it the whole time. And we came out of the backside of it. I mean, chomping at the bit, ready for SFFMA to open the floodgates. And in turn, we've paid them back, literally and figuratively. And the kicker with this is that we brace the basic concept of training. Our organization is about training. It's not about calls. It's not about public ed. It's not about the politics. It's about training, because the fact of the matter is that the baseline of training, the guiding light in this is SFFMA. And I truly hope that, God forbid anyone's listened this far, SFFMA literally has the roadmap in front of you. You just have to realize it and take advantage of the membership and what it does for you. And there's a lot of, and we haven't even really remotely hinted at the other benefits of it. To me, at the end
but
of
they're
the
all
day,
on our website.
right? Yeah. Well, go to the website. And I'm telling you, as a department that has really worked hard the last couple of years to stay with SFFMA, Donnie Boggs, Tim Rutland, all I can say is thank you. Yes, it was a long wait, but the product that you guys have delivered is valuable. And it's not a figurative speech. It's worth tens of thousands of dollars per individual. Take the time, double down on it, and realize that it is something that you can use for recruiting. It's something you can use for retention. It's something that you can use to continue to motivate the organization. It's a wide-ranging drift net, and it's up to the
Matt,
department.
you're talking about our portal, right? The whole system that we rebuilt.
Correct.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's always about the portal and the ability to use it, and more importantly, the ability, quite frankly, how easy it is to enter people's information now and their training. Jesse, you know a lot more about this.
Well, it's the ability to be successful, right? If you lose that ability to be successful, you get to that stagnant place, and we're pushed. In the short time, like Portal came live at the first of the year, really became a good thing in mid-year, right? Fully functional or functional enough that it's usable. Well, we're months out from that, and I've certified 6 or 8 people. Like that's awesome. That's what it's about. And in full disclosure, I'm on the certification board. I'm part of this push to get people involved, and I'm the volunteer, non-compensated employee that counters Kim here, but that's part of my job, is not just promoting the organization and doing those things, but it's the outreach stuff. It's the Monday evening I'm going to a department that's been they're there. They've struggled through part of it, but they're not all the way there. And I'm going to go talk to them, and I'm going to fire them up and get them back on board. And
that's awesome.
And that's part of my job as taking that position. And I, just like you said, it's an honor to be able to do that job. And
well, Jesse, I appreciate you and everyone like you who does this across the state. We couldn't do it without you. I will give you a little, I guess, insight, a little piece of knowledge. The whole program portal, I mean, it was really led by Tim Rutland, and then he brought on Darrell Beasley, and they've created, and I've been able to use the program myself now. They've created such an easy, intuitive, just a really well thought out program. And I know for a fact that there are still folks out there who say, well, I've tried to use your program and it doesn't work and it's too slow and blah, blah, blah. And we say, have you tried Portal? Well, I don't know. It was online. Well, we used to use something, I think it was called New Growth. And I just want to create a big image of the, yeah, exactly. I want to create an image of like the New Growth logo with a red line through it, and not to trash them, but it didn't work. It didn't work for us. And so I think what Darrell has done with Tim's direction is really create a system that is, I mean, once people see it, I'll give you an example. I was out in Uvalde in the spring, and there's a couple, they're both firefighters, and they came over to my table, and, you know, there was a little griping about the system and not being able to, can't upload this and can't do that. And Kevin Creamer was there, and he had his laptop, and he walked them through Portal, the new system. And I'm telling you, they went from frowning to smiling in about 10 seconds. Because once he showed them the system, how easy it is, how you walk through it, and there's, you know, help all along the way in it. They were blown away. And I love that example because it's like, if you just take a few minutes and go in and poke around the system, you will see how easy it is. So I just have to give them a lot of credit.
Oh yeah. And I guarantee you, poor Kevin, because Kevin's been the face of the organization through the decades and through the struggles, and I guarantee you he's doing backflips right now because he can literally within minutes get somebody up to speed, get them on pace, make things work. It's not this huge challenge that it was. He's not the one telling them, well, you did this wrong and you did this wrong, because you can't really do it wrong. There's, you know, it guides you through the process. And
I hope everyone goes in and uses it.
Yeah, I really felt for Kevin in the past because that had to be a hard job.
I'm sure it was. So let me give another shameless plug. Guys, you can always edit this out, but here's the thing I know about Portal. We do not have everyone's updated information. So you might be a member, but we have your 3 emails ago, right? Or we don't even have an email for you. So that can limit some of the ability for the system to be as effective as possible, because maybe you won't get the notification that you did something, or you need to do something, or, you know, whatever. So I will push, and I'm going to start doing this more on Facebook and in the newsletter. Please go into Portal, register your account, and provide the most current up-to-date information for you as an individual, not just your department. I have heard that sometimes one person in a department would register everybody on their roster and use one email. I think the system doesn't allow that anymore.
Yeah.
But that means in some cases we don't have an email for someone, which is a travesty, because then we can't communicate with them through the system. So I just encourage everyone to go in, make sure your account is registered. And if you're already registered, make sure it's updated. That will, you know, the fundamental flaw of every organization ever throughout human history is it always comes down to communication. I don't care what topic, I don't care what you're talking about. It's always communication. Not enough of it, a lack of it, too much of it, not to the right people, not the right message, not the right time, you name it. It's always the fundamental problem. So if your portal is updated, then we have the best way to communicate with you. Sorry, shameless plug, but I had to do it.
Well, and you're completely right, because in years past, if you go back 20 years, like that one person in the department was responsible for everybody's information and everything that ever happened. Yeah. And it's just not the case, and it's education, and that's part of your job, and that's part of my job, and you know that's what we're out here. You know, you're doing it in the aspect of the media and the social media and the emails, and I'm going and knocking on fire station doors. Yeah. And that's what it takes.
You just reminded me, you said the word media. I know we haven't touched on it. I know we're wrapping up, but I'll say this. I'm trying to establish relationships with media across the state, whether it's through tagging them or, you know, whatever on social media. I think there is a recruitment aspect that everybody could probably be using, and I don't know if they're all tapping into it or not, which is getting your local media involved to help tell the story as well. Yeah. And again, that's something that I can deal with in another venue, but just want to plant that seed for everyone as well. Get your local
I
media
was
involved.
hammering newspapers. I had an article released last week. So,
Oh, you did?
yeah. I mean, like I said, I've been hammering print news. In fact, the matter is I'm still in there once a month. So,
wow,
yeah.
that's impressive.
Well, and it's that big net, right? You catch it any way you can catch it.
That's right.
I think we owe Garfield a little time here to sum up his thoughts.
I don't think there's a whole lot more that I'm going to add other than what we've already said. I feel like anything I say is going to be repeating myself. If I had one, if there was one thing I can encourage anybody, I hope that if leadership is listening, the one thing that they begin to take away from this is, and I speak from experience because I was this person for a long time, is don't believe that the title means you have to have all the answers. And don't feel challenged and don't feel threatened because you don't. And begin to open your mind, begin to look at these things that we've talked about, some of the concepts that we've really discussed, and allow that to be, a sponge. Look for information that you can begin inspiring other people and looking to other people to help with these things. Because you're not going to have all the answers, and it's never your job to have all the answers. And I would hope that some of the things that we've talked about tonight really kind of spurs people's minds in different areas to think, I've got to find some other strong individuals to be around me, to place around me, to help me figure these things out, and use them to their strengths. So that's really the only thing else I would have to add in this conversation. So I just appreciate being a part of it.
And so now I'm going to hit the shameless plug, right? So when all these conversations were happening at the table in the station, and Matt and I were having these long, involved conversations at 10 o'clock at night, waiting for the guys to get back from whatever call, and I said, we're doing a podcast, right? This is the moment that the podcast was made for, right? This is the reason why we started doing this. It was because we saw that the conversations that we were having were worth having. And that the more people that we could get involved in those conversations, the more perspective we could gain. And it's not because we're tooting our horn and we're telling you, oh, we're awesome and we did all this. Yeah, that's such a small piece of this.
No, we're telling you we failed 100 times and we got back up 101.
Right. That's what this is about. And understand that our listenership, while there's a lot in Texas, right? Because that's where we are, and that's who we know, and that grew organically from the people we knew. But we have a huge listenership in Seattle, New York, Minneapolis, Atlanta, Europe. We had a download in Turkey this week or somewhere like that. I hope they're trying to learn English from me. I truly do, because that's going to be awesome.
God spare them.
But if you're not in Texas, this stuff still applies. Maybe you don't have the state firemen, fire marshals of Indiana, right? Maybe that doesn't exist, but maybe that's the reason you need to get that going and make that be a thing, right? I don't know what every other state, and we've had people from other states reach out to us repetitively on different items, and we've had guests from other states come on. And while the one thing we've figured out is that this is pretty universal. The things we're talking about are applicable no matter where you're at. Now, maybe it doesn't all work everywhere, but the conversation is still the same conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where we truly believe volunteerism isn't dead, because we're having these people reach out to us, and we're having these conversations that maybe two guys are at the station having, but they're not sharing it with anybody that's truly going to do anything with it.
Yeah.
I hope you guys keep having these conversations. I was so impressed by your podcast, just listening to a couple of episodes after I found out about it and thinking, why isn't everybody listening to this? I mean, this should be every department in Texas should be listening to this.
Well, and the kicker from our perspective was, I mean, Jesse joined, oh God,
Almost 5 years ago.
18, 19. And it took 2 years of knowing each other before we realized, like, both of us are committed to this. And it's not that we ideologically agreed on every single facet of it. But the fact of the matter is my favorite quote of all time. The difference between commitment and involvement is like a ham and eggs breakfast. The pig was committed and the chicken was involved. And the fact of the matter is that we had two people in the same organization that were committed to volunteerism. And the discussion rolled into, God, not only do we agree with ourselves, but I bet you there's more people that agree with this. And the problem was there's not a volunteer podcast. There's not a just strictly how do you remain volunteer? How not a book. There's not a playbook. There's no one out there championing volunteers. And I'm telling you, volunteers is the answer. Every single time. I don't care how small or how big you are. The answer is volunteer. But you got to have people committed to volunteer. And you got to have an organization like SFFMA to be able to basically hit your star to. You got to have something fundamentally there that bolsters the organization. And it's not just people, because you'll catch yourself if you're completely working by yourself, you're just spinning your wheels. You got to get a buddy, you got to get someone else committed to it. You got to find something to actually base your ideology off of. I mean, it's not just one thing, but it starts at one. That's the kicker. And I just truly feel that in today's environment that people are, for lack of better words, hopeless. And the fact of the matter is there's thousands of other people that feel the same way. And if you just talk to each other, you'd realize, oh, Christ, they have a good idea. Oh, hell, we should try that. Jesus, we never did that. And that's the purpose of this. And I mean, the handful of people that truly realize what SFFMA can be for you, it can result in an organization like ours, because we've been part of it forever. Yeah. It's always been there. I'm trying to find a sticker that says a date, 1876.
Yes, 1876.
Let me check. Yep, that's more than however old I am.
It's a little bit older than you. We're 147 years old. So in 3 years is the big 150, and that's going to be a big year for us. Before I go, so I should let you know, I've been smelling the tri-tip that my husband made for us for dinner for like an hour.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I'm going to go have some. And it was totally worth waiting for, because this conversation has been absolutely fantastic for me. But a couple things I want to remind people. One is go to our website, which is sffmatx.org. Follow us on Facebook. I recently revived our Twitter account. Jesse, you know that because you had a great comment to me on there the other day. On Facebook, actually, because I talked about it. So you made me laugh. But we're trying new things, and we're trying to get the word out. I might do Instagram. We might try TikTok. I'm not sure about that. But figure out who we are and what we do, and learn more about SFFMA and how we can help your department. And then read the newsletter. Please read the newsletter. I spend time writing it, and I hope that it's valuable. I hope people think there's some use for it. But we are currently in our membership drive, and so starting November 1, you can re-up or join for the first time and your coverage starts January 1. I just want to remind people that, another big benefit aside from training and certification and all that is the insurance. And it was very tragic, but in 2022, we had 2 firefighters who everybody thought they were members and they were all paid up, and they were not. And they passed away, line of duty deaths. They did not end up with a dime. And it breaks my heart to say that. But if you're not signed up, you don't have coverage. So I don't want to end on that low note, but just please remember, it's important if you want the coverage to sign up. But the conference in 2024 is June. It's at the end of June. Now it's only a 4-day conference. It's in San Marcos this coming year. Beautiful San Marcos, Texas. So I hope everyone will pay attention to what's going on, learn about the conference and why it's important to be there. And if you have any questions, if we can do anything for you, we're always happy to help. I would like to remind folks that you have local training coordinators like Jesse, and you have zone coordinators who can also help you. If for some reason you can't get, a person at the state office, you basically have 8 human beings for 15,000 plus members. So we do our best, but there are local and zone reps out there who can also help you. That information is available on our website. So I want people to use that as a resource. And but we're happy to help in any way that we can, point you to the right information. It's a real honor to work for this organization. I have to say, I'm pretty pleased at the leap that I made, and it was a big decision, but I think it was the right one. And I'm really grateful for what y'all do and what you do for your communities, and that you step up and you answer the call. And I want to try to use everything that I learned and all the stories to help as many people as possible. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this conversation today. I'm truly grateful.
Kim, we really appreciate your time. We've definitely been a little long on this one. We know that just due to circumstance and the timing of the meetings for the year that you've already had a really long day.
It's all good. I'm glad to be here. And you know what? I think the 4 of us could probably talk for 4 more hours.
Probably.
Nobody would want to hear it.
Yeah, that's the problem is that a conversation I consider a challenge. And yeah, I could keep going about this forever.
It's an important topic.
If you'll hang on just for a minute as we wrap up, just so we can finish saying thank you to you. I'm going to go through our podcast notes real quick.
Before you do that, I got one quick little thing. So if you're out there in listener land and this resonated with you and you said, you got it all right except for this, right? Here's where Matt's going to tell you what to do.
Yeah. Find us at our email. Send us our email, because if you disagree with us or you have a particular challenge, ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. Please, for the love of God, let us know. We'll cuss and discuss it. You can always find us on Twitter at ITLBcast. You can find us on the subreddit at ITLBcast. If you're feeling real feisty and particularly insightful, you can always find us on Patreon at It Tastes Like Burning. We'll send you stickers.
Yeah.
With that, Garfield, do you have any closing words?
No, I appreciate being on. I appreciate being a part of the conversation. And Kim, thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and thank you guys for everything that you're doing in the world of the conversation and bringing this out to everybody and really pulling people together and giving them the ability to connect and really think about these things. So thank you all.
This is Matt.
This is Jesse.
Thank you for your time. We're out.